it seems like you have a habit or a trajectory of getting in relatively early at companies. Is that fair? Like, obviously, you were the first go-to-market hire there, relatively early at a few other startups. Would you say that that's fair? Like, has that been part of your career strategy?
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love the early stage, kind of everyone's figuring it out. The A to B to C stage. I think there's just a
Mhm.
lot to learn and I love kind of being in the trenches and trying to figure it out. Um, you know, Defining a lot of process, helping kind of people figure out their go-to-market strategy, and then more importantly, the challenge for me of just getting up every day and figuring out how to compete and get people to want to buy into what you're preaching, what you're selling. I absolutely love the challenge. I think that's just a niche that I've kind of found myself always waking up and feeling like, hey, I can get up and compete for this every day. I've seen some of the bigger companies like the KPMGs and the E2 Opens of the world, which are larger kind of enterprise companies. Like, I do like that style and I appreciate that lifestyle, but I just find myself feeling more competitive, like on a personal and obviously on a professional day to day of getting involved with these smaller companies and trying to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, let's talk about competition. You mentioned competition. Tell me a little bit about how you think about competition when it comes to sales.
Yeah. It's funny. I keep the competition. I actually have this picture of Competition Tuesday from the USC days when Pete Carroll and actually my cousin Yogi Roth, who we talked about earlier, they had this Competition Tuesdays where everyone's got to go out there and earn their job on Tuesdays. I scratched that out and I said competition every day.
Yeah.
That's really kind of the challenge I put to myself around, hey, what are you going to do that's going to bring your A game every single day, whether it's the small tasks of, send and follow up emails or calendar invites, to being extremely dialed in on disco calls, to making sure your customers feel the value full life cycle, or your prospects feel the value full life cycle. I mean, for me, it's the challenge for myself to kind of one up it every day. And I absolutely love the ability to kind of get out there and say, look, someone else is doing this and someone else would absolutely love to do this if you weren't doing this. So that aspect of competition just always keeps me going and really keeps me energized. Cause again, I think there's other people that, are out there and are doing the same. And I love to learn from them and see, kind of see what keeps them ticking. But, I keep a lot of things around me that keep my passions going and keep me, wanting to compete every day and up my level and up my game. And I'm rambling a bit here, but I think that's my excitement, is really just the ability to want to get better every day and be able to compete and drive value for new areas that I haven't been able to drive value to, and continue to sharpen my own tool set, right? I do not know everything by any means. I've got a lot to learn here. And I surround myself with people that are competing just as hard as me. And that's what keeps me motivated.
So I want to put a pin in the competition to take a quick detour. You mentioned Pete Carroll, Competition Tuesdays. There is a video on YouTube of Pete Carroll giving the commencement speech at USC. I don't know what year. There's probably like 8,000 views, and me and my buddy have 4,000 of those views. We've watched it probably, 4,000 times. And he tells this whole story about talking to a recruit. And at the end, he's like writing a letter to the kid. And he just says, always compete. You always compete. And he writes a poem, I think is what it is. And he reads kind of like the poem he wrote about, it's called Always Compete. And when me and my buddy ran a marathon that year that we watched, it's like 4 years ago, we ran our first marathon. And I remember it's like mile 20, which is the toughest. It's like you're far enough where your legs are screaming at you, but you're still like 6 miles away, which kind of sucks. And I just look at him and I just start screaming, always compete, always compete. And we're like foaming at the mouth, getting fired up. And so when you said that, and then as soon as you brought Pete Carroll up, that flashback just went into my brain. So I had to do that justice by giving you that detour just for a moment.
Love it, man. Yeah, no, I know the exact commencement speech you're referring to as well. I probably have another 100 views on there myself. So,
That's great.
Yeah,
That's
man.
great. When you think about competition, when I was early in my career, like as a former athlete myself, as you were, like I looked at the people around me as other reps, and I looked at them like, I'm going to dominate you and you and you. And I didn't say that to them, but that's what I was thinking in my head. And that drove me, and I did really well to start, but it wasn't sustainable. It burned me out. And, I think it didn't create great relationships early on in my career. And I've shifted that to more of like an internal motivation of trying to, be my best versus the best, right? And like, what am I capable of, and how do I get, 1% better on that every day? But I'm curious I feel like people have different takes on this, but I'm curious what your take is on when you think about compete and you think about that motivation. Like, are you factoring in your peers or anything like that and wanting to be number one, or is it just like, here's where AJ was yesterday, I want to be a little bit better than that?
Yeah, to answer your question succinctly, yeah, I think it's the latter for me. I really do value competing against myself. I call it my coaching background, call it my sports background, like coming together as one. Like I've always kind of been in that team sports mode. So I'm not really the traditional kind of like, hey, I need to compete against A, B, and C, or I need to compete against this individual as a rep. I'm always someone who like, hey, a rising tide floats all boats. Like if we win this thing together, we're going to be in a much better place, holistically come, couple years, couple quarters from now. Right. So yeah. And I think that to answer your question, like the competition component really just comes from me. Like, yeah, I see other reps doing great things, and yeah, that motivates me to continue to try to get better, but it motivates me to say like, what are they doing that allows me to go out there and compete the same way, right? Or compete in a better way. That's going to allow me to up my game. And I've got a bunch of folks that I continually, just keep the pulse of and keep tracking to see what they're doing. Cause I know they're evolving their game. And, that's the element to me that's like, okay, well, they're continuing to compete in their certain specific ways. How can I do that as well? And I'm not necessarily competing against them because I don't really want to compete against them. I don't want to compete against my internal reps. I mean, those are my friends. Those are my peers. Those are my colleagues. We're all trying to get the same collective goal. And if we can help each other out along the way, that's great. But who am I competing against? I'm competing against the other, the competition that's out there is trying to sell against us. Right. Yeah. I think for me, everyone that's out there that's, trying to compete against us and compete against Tynes, compete against Trey, et cetera. Those are elements that kept me motivated. But in the end of the day, like what gets me up and gets me competitive is AJ, you got to get 1% better, 2% better, 3% better today based on everything that you saw yesterday and the, previous quarters, previous years. What's going to continue to move the needle for you so that you're accelerating your career path, you're accelerating your deal cycles, you're accelerating, whatever the case may be, to continue to get better. So that's really the, the kind of the internal competition as you referred to that keeps me ticking.